Ladies and gentlemen, we have to ask ourselves one fundamental question. Will the GNU collapse, or will it last? But before we get into the main news, can I please ask you, once again, please subscribe to this channel and help us on our journey to 100,000 subscribers. It's like 25,000 subs away. Quite a lot, but you can help us get there. So before we get on to the main news story, let me give you an update. On Tuesday, I did a video about the United Kingdom, specifically around the riots. Now, YouTube felt the need to restrict that video and slap it with an 18 age restriction, and you could only log in to view the video. So I didn't get that many views because YouTube made it very difficult to find. Well, the current updates on the situation is that the UK is expecting a further 30 riots in 30 different locations. And Keir Starmer has a response to this. He says that what he expects to do in the next week is implement substantive sentencing for all those involved, and this will show them, and this will make them stop rioting because you'll put them in prison. And so to do that, he's freed up 500 spaces in prisons. We had been told that there were no spaces left in prisons, but he found some. The riots themselves are being blamed on the EDL, the English Defence League, even though they don't exist anymore. But the Muslim Defence League certainly does exist, and they're fine. According to the Prime Minister, the slogan, "Enough is enough," is a far-right chant. According to Elon Musk, a civil war in the United Kingdom is inevitable. And according to Keir Starmer, Elon Musk is lying, and he's spreading fake news on his fake news platform. But if you looked at all of this and thought to yourself, nah, these guys are lying. Well, today, chief constables addressed the United Kingdom and offered a bunch of Muslim salutes at the start.
Salam alaikum. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the leaders and elders that have afforded me this opportunity to speak to you.
Many people questioned why you would be addressing a Muslim crowd with Muslim slogans in a predominantly white English country, but that's a conversation for another day. Turning then to the next story, according to an article in BizTech, there's a rise in veganism in South Africa. Now, I don't know about you, but I call nonsense. South Africa is a predominantly carnivorous society. We like our meat, and I don't see veganism taking off here, unless they mean lamb. Turning then onto our first major story, and that is Ramaphosa has addressed his caucus through a lakotla, and what they've done is they've basically discussed the electoral defeat. And in this caucus, they've discussed why the ANC performed badly at the last elections. Now, according to Ramaphosa, the ANC would not shield away from their mistakes. It was just nothing more than a strategic setback. And they still wanted the whole democratic, united, non-racist, free, democratic society, the usual buzzwords they like to say. But I have to ask you the simple question. If this is all true, why do we still have BE? Why are we still discussing NHR? Why are we still discussing expropriation without compensation? Because you see, it becomes interesting in that the ANC lost the elections not because of slogans, but because the economy is badly performing, people don't have jobs, and their quality of life has been significantly affected through economic opportunities and through crime. Now, all of that has been caused by ANC incompetence. And Cyril seems to understand this because he goes on to address his caucus and says, please stop living a lavish lifestyle. You may drive expensive cars and wear designer clothes, but this doesn't look good to our electorate. According to Ramaphosa, driving these fancy cars and spending all the money on designer clothes makes the ANC give the impression that they're better than the people they attempt to serve. It also makes the people think that the ANC tolerates corruption and patronage. And to the rest of us, we all go, yeah, that's obvious. Now, what's really interesting is that a further study was done by Gender Links and International Idea Partnerships. And according to this study, the ANC only lost the election because they don't have enough gender parity. Yes, you heard me right. Gender parity. Now, I call nonsense. And the reason I call nonsense is because MK did pretty well. They've only got 34% of females. And the DA did pretty well too, and they got 32% females. So one has to ask the question, what juju are these guys smoking? I mean, an organization with gender equality basically in the name is ranting on about gender equality? Well, I never. On to another really important story. This is the discussion around constitutionalism in South Africa. As for those of you who don't know, the MK party wants to push forward degrees of parliamentary supremacy and get rid of the constitution. Now, according to a very famous advocate in South Africa, the same one that took Israel to the Human Rights Court, South Africa has a pro-poor constitution. And what it's meant to do is produce pro-poor outcomes, basically anti-poor outcomes, but it doesn't. Now, according to him, the first years of democracy saw 20% uplifts in households, whilst the bottom 30% were impoverished even further. So 20% of black individuals became richer, 30% became poorer. So asked why this might be, he says, and I quote, "It can be explained by apartheid racism and its endurance, governmental and institutional collapse, and a stagnant economy unable to produce sustainable employment opportunities, and the indifference to the emerging black elite to the plight of the poor." Yes, because you see, what typically tended to happen with many of the BEE legislation is it didn't address equality. It enriched a certain few to the detriment of the majority. We all know this. So, according to said advocate, this becomes very interesting because the Constitution is apparently a manifesto of economic justice. According to him, the idea of parliamentary supremacy is actually a colonialist and imperialistic idea, which comes from Britain and was used in the Cape and Natal. And this is true. The Nats used parliamentary supremacy to keep themselves in power. And that's kind of what the ANC would like. So according to this advocate, constitutionalism is the only way to resolve inequality in South Africa, not cheap populist slogans. But I would say not. You see, because the problem is that what the Constitution does is it makes it imperative on the state to interfere with the economy. And they're inept at doing that. They're useless at doing that. They actually cause economic sabotage by the state getting involved. BE, expropriation without compensation, all of the state-owned enterprises, they all kill economic activity. Now, let's be realistic. There's like 6 to 7 million white people in the country. There's not actually that many if you really think about it. And there's like another 60 million black people. So if you really think about it, it's impossible to sustain an economy on 7 million whites alone. This should be logical. So if you grow an economy to a certain perspective, you have to include the blacks. It's impossible not to include the black majority. It's impossible. There just aren't enough people to sustain the economy otherwise. Now, any capitalist, like Thomas Sowell, could probably tell you that. But if you ask an ANC communist, well, they can't. So on to the main story, and I asked you at the start of the video, will the GNU hold true or will it collapse? We see the reason that the story is important is because apparently the DA and the Freedom Front Plus in the Western Cape have separated and gone different ways. In a municipality in the Western Cape where those two had aligned in order to create a majority in a caucus, the Freedom Front Plus apparently withdrew their support from a budget. They said the budget wasn't quite up to scratch and they wanted to discuss it with the DA. The DA basically said, no, just vote for it. And they said no. Now, for those of you who are in the know, the Freedom Front Plus and the DA have been strategic allies for a very long time. And what we are seeing is that that partnership is strategically collapsing right across the Western Cape. There are numerous examples of it. But more interesting is actually what's happening in Ekurhuleni. In Durban, the ANC and the DA were meant to go into a coalition because that province is currently being governed by an ANC DA IFP coalition. But in the Durban municipality, the DA and the ANC were unable to find each other. And the disputes basically came across on portfolio committees and the division of those portfolio committees between certain members. Because the parties were unable to find each other, coalition discussion between the ANC and the DA collapsed, and now the IFP are left to negotiate with the ANC independently of the DA. Some are arguing that the DA may be pushing itself and making itself the worst coalition partner to choose through nothing more than their demands. Demands have been seen by some as being unrealistic. Many individuals say the DA is not very good at negotiating. This is an argument we heard from Gator McKenzie many times before under the previous administration, and as a result, strategic coalitions where the DA is involved have become problematic around the country. So one has to go back to the original question. Will the GNU hold? We've already seen instances where Helen Zille has upset certain key ANC individuals, and that spat has become problematic for the top echelons of both political parties. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you tell me in the comment section below, what do you think? Will the GNU last? And also, feel free to tell me, what do you think of the riots going on in the UK? Is veganism really on the rise in South Africa? Is Ramaphosa misdiagnosing the problem with his political party? And should South Africa embrace parliamentary supremacy or keep the Constitution? I look forward to hearing from you in the comment section below. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it from me today, and I'll leave you with this.
The idea that we have to insist on our borders, there is something racist about that.
Right, so you believe that people who, like Tim Montgomery, say there should be managed or strong national borders are implicitly racist?
I think there is...
Intolerance is a preference of the far left, which portray everyone else as Corbyn's poo tastes adorable, and if you dispute that, you are known as far right. John's been sniffing glue. He gets frustrated that there aren't enough immigrants. They love a bit of it. Far right. Who's that gut lord marching? You should cut down on your pork life, mate. Get some exercise. All the people, all the white people, and they all get slandered and branded as being on the far right. Know what I mean? I get up when I want, except when there's a call to prayer at the local mosque. Far right. I put my trousers on, I go on Facebook and I complain about the noise. Far right. I feed the trolls, I sometimes feed the feminists too. It gives me a sense of enormous well-being. Far right. And then I'm happy for the rest of the day, safe in the knowledge that a social justice warrior has been triggered. All the people, all the white people, and they all get slandered and branded as being on the far right. Far right, far right, far right, far right. It's got nothing to do with supporting free speech, you know. Far right. Or mocking fallacious feminist arguments that go round and round and round. All the people, all the white people, and they all get slandered and branded as being on the far right. All the people, all the white people, and they